One of the most startling insights from recent genetic modeling is that the ancestors of modern humans did not evolve from a single population at all. Instead, our lineage appears to be the product of at least two deeply divergent populations that split roughly 1.5 million years ago and then merged again around 300,000 years ago. The genetic imprint of that reunion remains unmistakable today. Roughly 80% of the genome of living humans derives from one ancestral group labeled Population A by researchers, while about 20% comes from another lineage known only as Population B. Some of the genes introduced by this mysterious population appear to be associated with neural processing and brain development, suggesting that the fusion of these two ancient lineages may have contributed to the cognitive capacities that define our species. That discovery alone should force a profound rethinking of human evolution. 20% of the human genome is not a trivial contribution. It represents a massive infusion of genetic material from a population that had been evolving separately for more than 1 million years. In evolutionary terms, this was not a brief episode of interbreeding, but a major population merger. Yet, the identity of Population B remains unknown. The genetic model can reconstruct the existence of this lineage, but cannot directly link it to a specific fossil population. Somewhere in the ancient world, there must have existed a group of humans who lived for hundreds of thousands of years, largely apart from the ancestors of Homo sapiens, developing their own anatomical and genetic traits before eventually merging with them. The question that now looms over paleoanthropology is where these people lived and what role they played in the emergence of modern humans. One of the most compelling places to search for this lost population lies in the rugged landscapes of northwestern Africa. Morocco, long overlooked in discussions of human origins, is now emerging as one of the most important regions in the evolutionary history of our species. Over the past several decades, fossil discoveries from this region have begun to reveal a deep and complex record of human ancestry stretching back nearly 1 million years. Among the most intriguing finds are fossils from the site known as Thomas Quarry, near Casablanca. These remains, dated to approximately 773,000 years ago, include several lower jaws and teeth that display an unusual mixture of traits. They resemble Homo erectus in some respects, yet differ in ways that suggest they represent a distinct lineage close to the common ancestor of modern humans, Neanderthals and Denisovans. What makes these Moroccan fossils particularly fascinating is their resemblance to Homo antecessor, a species known from the famous cave sites of Atapuerca in northern Spain. Homo antecessor lived roughly 800,000 to 1 million years ago and has long been considered a candidate for the ancestral population from which later human lineages emerged. The similarities between the Moroccan fossils and those from Spain hint at a possibility that was rarely considered in older models of human evolution, that populations moved back and forth across the narrow waters of the Strait of Gibraltar during the Middle Pleistocene. Rather than serving as a rigid boundary between continents, the Mediterranean may have functioned as a dynamic corridor linking southern Europe and North Africa. Over hundreds of thousands of years, populations related to Homo antecessor could have expanded into Morocco and established themselves there, evolving along their own path while remaining intermittently connected to other hominin groups across the region. If such a lineage took root in North Africa, it could have persisted for immense spans of time, gradually developing distinctive anatomical and genetic characteristics. Over the course of 1 million years, the descendants of these early settlers would have become increasingly different from their relatives elsewhere. In this scenario, the Moroccan populations might represent exactly the kind of deeply divergent lineage predicted by the genetic model of Population B. The timeline fits remarkably well. If Population B split from the ancestors of modern humans around 1.5 million years ago, a lineage derived from early Homo populations like Homo antecessor could easily have been evolving in North Africa for hundreds of thousands of years before reconnecting with the ancestors of Homo sapiens around 300,000 years ago. It is precisely at that moment in time that one of the most famous fossil discoveries in human evolution appears in the Moroccan record. The site of Jebel Irhoud, located in western Morocco, has produced human remains dated to roughly 300,000 years ago. When these fossils were first described decades ago, they were difficult to interpret. Some researchers initially classified them as archaic Homo sapiens, while others saw them as transitional forms bridging earlier humans and our own species. More recent excavations and improved dating methods have placed the Irhoud fossils at the center of the debate about the origins of modern humans. They are now widely regarded as among the earliest representatives of our species, yet they remain profoundly puzzling. The reason for this puzzle lies in the anatomy of the Irhoud skulls. Their faces look remarkably modern. The cheekbones are relatively flat, the midface is reduced, and the overall facial structure resembles that of present-day humans far more than it resembles earlier hominins. But the brain cases tell a different story. Instead of the rounded, globular cranial vault characteristic of modern Homo sapiens, the Irhoud skulls possess elongated brain cases more reminiscent of older human forms. The combination is striking, a modern-looking face paired with a primitive brain shape. This mismatch has led many researchers to suggest that modern facial features evolved before the distinctive globular shape of the modern human brain case. According to this interpretation, early Homo sapiens initially possessed faces that looked essentially modern, while their brains still retained an archaic configuration. Only later did the cranial vault become more rounded, reflecting deeper changes in brain organization and development. But when the genetic evidence for population B is placed alongside the fossil record of Morocco, another possibility emerges. What if the genes responsible for enhancing neural function had already entered the population by the time the Irhoud people lived? In that case, the anatomical transformation of the brain case might have lagged behind the genetic changes affecting brain development. The Irhoud individuals could represent a transitional stage in which the genetic architecture of the modern human brain had already begun to form, even though the outward shape of the skull had not yet caught up. If population B was indeed a North African lineage related to Homo antecessor, its merger with population A around 300,000 years ago may have taken place in precisely this region. The descendants of that merger could have been the people whose fossils we now call Jebel Irhoud. Their modern-looking faces might reflect one evolutionary trajectory, while the gradual reorganization of the brain case represents another process unfolding over tens of thousands of years. The genes influencing neural development, introduced through the mixing of populations, may have been silently reshaping the brain long before their effects became visible in skull morphology. The idea that the face could evolve before the brain might seem surprising at first, but it is entirely plausible from an evolutionary standpoint. Facial anatomy is influenced by many factors, including diet, chewing mechanics, and respiratory function. Changes in these systems can produce relatively rapid shifts in facial structure. The brain, by contrast, is an extraordinarily complex organ whose development is governed by intricate genetic networks. Alterations in brain structure and organization may require longer periods of evolutionary fine-tuning before their anatomical consequences become fully apparent. Under this perspective, the Irhoud fossils are no longer an awkward halfway point between archaic humans and ourselves. Instead, they become something far more intriguing, the visible evidence of a profound genetic fusion that reshaped the evolutionary trajectory of our species. Around 300,000 years ago, two populations that had been separated for over 1 million years may have come together somewhere in North Africa. One lineage, population A, carried the ancestry that would eventually lead to Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans. The other lineage, population B, had been evolving along its own path, perhaps descended from Homo antecessor-like populations that once moved between Iberia and Morocco. When these groups met and interbred, the resulting population inherited genetic traits from both. The genomic evidence suggests that some of the genes introduced during this event may have been involved in neural processing and brain function. If that interpretation is correct, then the fusion of population A and population B could represent one of the most consequential moments in the history of our species. The modern human brain may not be the product of a single lineage evolving in isolation. Instead, it may be the result of a deep evolutionary partnership between populations that had been separated for more than 1 million years. The broader implications of this possibility are enormous. For decades, debates about human origins have focused on whether our species evolved in a single geographic location or across a broader network of populations within Africa. The discovery of population B suggests that even those models may underestimate the complexity of our ancestry. Human evolution may have involved not just multiple populations within Africa, but also lineages moving between Africa and Eurasia over immense spans of time. The Mediterranean basin, far from being a peripheral region, may have served as one of the central crossroads where these populations met and exchanged genes. Morocco sits at the heart of this crossroads. To the north lies the Iberian Peninsula, home to some of the most important early human fossils in Europe. To the east stretches the corridor leading into the Levant and the Middle East, regions that played critical roles in later human dispersals. To the south lies the vast African continent with its own diverse hominin populations. Over hundreds of thousands of years, climate fluctuations would have alternately opened and closed migration routes between these regions, creating opportunities for populations to expand, contract, and reconnect. Within such a dynamic landscape, it is entirely plausible that a lineage descended from Homo antecessor established itself in North Africa and evolved there for hundreds of thousands of years. Isolated at times, yet periodically connected to other populations, this lineage could have developed distinctive genetic traits, including variants affecting neural development. When the ancestors of Homo sapiens encountered them around 300,000 years ago, the resulting genetic exchange may have introduced those traits into the emerging human lineage. Today, the people of population B no longer exist as a separate group. Their identity has been absorbed into the ancestry of modern humans, yet their legacy persists in every genome on Earth. Roughly 1/5 of the DNA carried by living people traces back to that mysterious lineage. Some of the genetic sequences that shape the way our brains function may ultimately descend from those ancient humans who once lived in the landscapes of North Africa. The implications of this realization are difficult to overstate. The human brain, often celebrated as the defining feature of our species, may itself be the product of a deep evolutionary alliance. Instead of emerging within a single lineage, our cognitive abilities may have arisen through the merging of populations that had spent over 1 million years evolving separately. In that sense, the story of human origins may not begin with Homo sapiens at all. It may begin much earlier, with populations like Homo antecessor spreading across the ancient Mediterranean world, leaving descendants on both sides of the sea. In Morocco, those descendants may have continued their evolutionary journey in relative isolation until the moment when they encountered the ancestors of modern humans. The meeting of those populations around 300,000 years ago may have triggered a genetic transformation whose consequences still shape our species today. If this hypothesis is correct, then the Moroccan fossil record holds one of the deepest secrets of human evolution. The people of Jebel Irhoud may represent not simply early Homo sapiens, but the descendants of a profound genetic fusion between two ancient human worlds. Their modern faces and archaic brain cases may capture the moment when the foundations of the modern human brain were being laid. And the mysterious population B, long hidden in the shadows of the genome, may turn out to have been the forgotten architects of the human mind. Thanks for watching.